Welcome back. Well, now we do have Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, who is the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, joining us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me in the Sunrise program today.
All right, well,
Nigerians.
Yesterday we had a member of the House of Representatives who raised concerns about some provisions of the Finance Act, which he says lowers the tariffs for imported vehicles. He says that is going to adversely affect the automobile manufacturing concerns in this country. So could you go ahead and shed some light on the reasons behind that decision?
Okay, well, the Finance Bill 2019 and the Finance Bill 2020 were both designed to enable us adopt counter-cyclical policy measures to be able to adequately respond to the COVID-19 pandemic by providing fiscal relief to taxpayers. And some of these provisions in the bill also is designed to reform fiscal incentive policies that have been existing for a long time, and also to prioritize job creation and accelerate economic recovery, and also to foster greater collaboration between the monetary, fiscal, and trade authorities. So when we were designing the bill, we adopted 5 thematic areas. One of these areas, in addition to counter-cyclical measures, is to provide fiscal relief for mass transit. This is important because we have inflation running at double digit and increasing on a month-to-month basis. And when you decouple the inflation, you find that one of the major components of the inflation is food inflation. One of the major drivers of food inflation is transportation costs. So we were looking for how to reduce the cost of transportation for the benefit of Nigerians. This reduction in duties and tariff will have the impact of reducing cost of transportation, will have the impact of enabling Nigerians to bring in more trucks for agricultural production, more mass transit vehicles, and also more trucks that moves goods across the country. This will reduce the cost of transportation, and will also reduce the cost of food and provide relief to the greater proportion of Nigerians. Of course, we realized it was going to have an impact on the auto industry because of the penalties that we have imposed and the high duties to encourage the investment in the sector. Our design of this policy is not to hurt the auto industry. If it has that consequence, government has already started discussing with the industry. We have had one meeting chaired by His Excellency, the Vice President, in which the auto industry was engaged, and we are to continue engaging to say, okay, what do we do to provide relief for you in this interim period? Because this is a fiscal relief. We're not one of those countries that have so much headroom in terms of fiscal space that will provide cash or monies to Nigerians. So we find fiscal ways in which to reach Nigerians, to help people conserve their resources so that they can use that resource for consumption purposes, which has the impact of driving economic growth within the system.
It would seem, madam, that we are solving one problem and creating another or fostering another, because part of the plan of the automotive, the National Automotive Plan, was to recruit Nigerians in their millions, looking at the direct employment and indirect employment that the automotive plan, detailed out over the past few years. So it's not just the automotive industry itself that talking about the investors now, but the opportunity to create jobs in that sector, which would empower so many other people to have money in their pocket. So has that been factored into this policy? How has that been addressed?
Yes, it has. We said we realized it was going to hurt the industry, and that means also it will affect some of the intended outcomes of the automotive policy. This is a policy that has been running for 7 years. Today we have 14 automotive plants in the country. Their combined production is under 50,000. The needs in Nigeria is 750,000 vehicles. We have a global crisis. This is the economic slowdown occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic is a crisis that we have not seen anywhere in this country or even globally. So we have to take measures that are difficult but tough but necessary to be able to have the desired relief to the greater population. When you take a policy as a government, it's always you're providing benefit on the one hand, and then you're hurting maybe another aspect. Then you now look at that other segment that you're hurting and say, how do we address it? So government has started discussing, and we're saying, okay, we can uptake your vehicles. Federal government has a commitment to buy made in Nigeria. So federal government this year must stand with that commitment and buy all the vehicles that this assembly plants in Nigeria produce. And we will engage the state and encourage them and the local governments and encourage them to do the same thing. This is a time-bound relief. It's not a perpetual provision that has been made. We make provisions during times of crisis to provide relief to people, and some of these provisions in the Finance Act are correcting some wrongs that have been there before or difficulties for businesses, but some are to provide immediate relief in the best way that we can under the circumstances that we find ourselves in Nigeria today.
Madam, is that to say that the automotive industry is not employing people or doing as well as it ought to do? Is the automotive plan, as according to you, has run for 7 years, is the plan not working as expected by government?
The plan has not produced the results that was desired. And maybe it has to do with the design of the plan itself. So you see, this policies makes a provision that when you allows you to bring in SKD and CKD at reduced import duty rates, and that when you assemble one vehicle, you can import two. But the policy didn't define which type of vehicle you import when you assemble that one vehicle. So it had the effect of not having the industry grow at the rate in which it is growing. We were hoping that by now we will have all kinds of value chain addition companies building glasses for the cars, building components, nuts and bolts. We don't have them. We don't have them. What is being done is assembly. Assembly, even not even at the in some cases very simple and basic level. Yes, there are staff that are employed, but they could have been more. And then the industry will have grown more now. And that is not to say that this policy is going to be jettisoned. This policy has been reviewed by the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and all of the trade authorities. I understand that the review has been completed. There will be a report that will be submitted because we have to review this policy so that we get the impact that we need to get from that policy. But the decision that we took in terms of the revision of these import duties, we realized it was going to affect the industry. And we're engaging the industry to discuss and agree with them the type of relief that they have. The relief that we provided is for taxpayers, it's for Nigerian taxpayers, the large population. That is what this is intended to achieve.
I mean, yes, it's good to improve the transport sector. We all want to see that. But how did the government arrive at that conclusion that lowering this tariff or bringing in buses will affect or ensure that the transport fares go lower? Because, I mean, we don't have a structured transport sector in the country.
Our transport sector is largely driven by the private sector. The cost of acquisition of trucks and vehicles, trucks for agricultural production and trucks for movement of goods is done by the private sector. So if you lower that cost, it will have the intended consequence of having more of these trucks come into the country. That is one. And because of the larger availability of trucks, it will reduce the cost of transport. It's very expensive to move goods within Nigeria. It's very expensive to move goods from farms to market. And also, it's costing people a lot to pay for mass transit to move from one place to the other. Apart from the issue of the cost of transport, Nigerian ports also, people say, have become unattractive. And because one of the reasons that we find is that because of the very high duties, there's a lot of smuggling of vehicles into the country, and traffic trade of import of vehicles has moved away from the Nigerian ports to our neighboring countries. So we also have loss of revenue. There's also this very high incidence of smuggling that is costing lives of law enforcement officers. This high smuggling is not limited to vehicles alone. It's also small arms, it's also drugs, it's also some foods that are banned from imports. But the import of vehicles through our country and in the smuggling of vehicles is very high. So it denies of revenue. This decision that has been taken means that the levies and the duties are now low for Nigerians, for businesses that are bringing in vehicles to bring them through Nigerian ports, so that the revenue accrues to the federation. There's also this very important aspect of scarcity of agricultural tractors. We have scarcity of agricultural tractors, and for us to be able to progress to meet our aspirations of food security, sustainable food security, we must mechanize agriculture. Mechanization of agriculture can only be done if you're able to bring in trucks. So it means now you can bring in agricultural trucks into Nigeria with very low cost. And we feel that that will encourage more people to bring in tractors, not only for farming, but also for leasing to farmers that are not able to themselves buy tractors for their farms.
Well, it would seem, I mean, you have said that this is, a temporary relief of some sort for the year, for Nigerians, for tax-paying Nigerians. But it would seem that it's a blanket lift of the import duty on almost all classes of vehicles, so that even the tractors are clearly spelt out in that policy. They're in a separate class by themselves. All other vehicles, from the ones meant to move food products to private vehicles, all of them have their import duties reduced to a large extent. First and foremost, I'd like to ask why that blanket removal, if ideally what we're targeting is food inflation. And then secondly, do we have a mechanism for monitoring? Because this is not the first time that we're talking about food inflation. I do recall when I'm trying to remember her name now, Mrs. Adeosun was Minister of Finance, there was a conversation around the high cost of moving food from north to south. And it would seem that, resolutions were not quite clear at that time. The resolutions we have come up with now, do we have a mechanism for monitoring to ensure that the policy would actually have an effect on the cost of food?
Yes, we do have a mechanism for monitoring. But let me first of all answer the first part of the question, which is why the blanket adjustments. For cars, the import duty is still 35%. What has been reduced is the levy from 35% to 5%. So there's still an import duty and a levy of 40% on cars. And this is still the highest within the region. For tractors, for mass transit vehicles, the change was from 35% to 5% and 10% respectively. And for trucks for movement of goods from 35% to 10% as well. So it's not a blanket removal. And then we remove the levies as well. but the import duties are still there for all of the classes of the vehicles, except that they are there at reduced rate. On monitoring, we do have a National Bureau of Statistics that reports on a monthly basis indices relating to consumption. And this report entails extensive surveys, gathering of data, and reporting on the movement of each of the key components that make up our perception index, which is a major tool for measurement of inflation. So on a monthly basis, this is measured. So we will be able to tell by this monthly assessment how the cost of transportation is moving. And any policy that is made, that is reviewed, means there's always an opportunity to amend and to improve. Our main target is to provide relief to Nigerians through this mass transit fiscal relief policy. That is our main focus. It's not to hurt the industry. Again, we will be engaging the industry to discuss with the industry and find out. We have our own views, right? And find out what they would want in this period when we have these adjustments that have been made to enable them continue to maintain and grow their businesses, maintain staff, and employ even more people, and to really grow. Again, we have reviewed the policy. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the result of the review. It's 7 years old. It's been reviewed. The review process has been going on for quite some time. I understand the trade authorities have finalized it, and they will circulate it, and we will sit with the industry on the outcome of that review. And that review also involves the industry. And we just want to get the best out of the auto policy in Nigeria for the benefit of businesses, but also for the benefit of Nigerians.
Considering where our greatest need lies right now, which is about the vehicles, mass transit, do you think that we could have encouraged our local auto industry to focus heavily on that and try to boost capacity in that respect, rather than say, oh, we know you're producing vehicles, government would, take off most of the vehicles that you're producing instead? Because some people will say that this policy, I don't want to use the word somersault, but it will seem that this policy adjustment could affect the trust, which is oftentimes lacking when government comes up with a policy, the trust and the confidence that investors need to put their money where the mouth of government is on the long run. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, our thinking is that we have to engage the industry to see how the automotive policy can be improved going forward. It's a policy that has run for 7 years, and it has actually been due for review at year 5, and it wasn't done. This review has just been concluded. Again, let us not forget that the greater benefit we seek to achieve is for Nigerians. When you have a patient that maybe has had an accident and comes into an emergency ward, what you want to do is to keep that patient alive. They're bleeding, you keep them alive, you resuscitate them before you start worrying about whether they have hypertension or diabetes. So we're trying to make sure that inflation does not continue to run away, that food prices do not continue to soar, that Nigerians will be able to afford food, and that they will have, as a result of savings from transport, more disposable income in their hands to be able to spend and consume in all consumption aspects of the economy. So this is targeted as providing tax relief to Nigerians, and it's all up to us, the auto industry and government, to look at how we can refine the auto policy so that we can get the desired results. We didn't design this policy to be able to reach 50,000 cars per annum at year 7. That's not the intention, when the demand is 750,000 per annum. So it means we need to do more to support the industry so that more of these vehicles are assembled and we're hoping manufactured in Nigeria eventually. We are working with the industry to make sure that they have partners that would come in and actually partner with them to manufacture vehicles in Nigeria, beyond the simplistic assembling of vehicles that is going on right now.
All right, madam, as we wind down this one, if I could just bring this up, it has to do with reports that made the rounds about sale of government assets to finance the budget. The chairman Senate Committee on Privatization, in reacting to those reports, even as announced by the BPE, selling Geregu or Motoshaw and the rest of them, he was saying that the Senate was not aware, no member of the Senate is aware of this plan, and that they needed a lot more clarification. So is that plan still on? Where are we concerning that?
Yes, so the privatization process is an ongoing process. Every year in our annual budget, we have a provision for privatization proceeds. That is proceeds from the sale of government assets. Yes, there are some power assets that have been scheduled for sale for years. This year, sorry, not this year, 2020, AFAN 4 was finally sold because the process is a long one. And one of the things with provisions in the Finance Act is to actually refine some of these privatization procurement processes to make them better so that they are more effective. There are some government assets that are dead that can be sold to private sector to be reactivated and put to use for the benefit of Nigerians. So we are looking at different, and I'm a member of the National Council of Privatization. We're looking at different categories of government assets that government has not been able to manage, that are lying down and in some cases even completely run down, to see them off to the private sector. So the intention is not just funding the budget, is to reactivate these assets and hand it over and have them bring contribution to the growth in the economy. It is I'm not sure why the chairman of the Senate Committee on Privatization has not been detailed or briefed on the privatization plan, but in the last week of December, we had a meeting of the National Council of Privatization where we approved the annual work plan, the 2021 work plan for the National Bureau of Enterprise, the BPE. And I guess it will be in this first quarter that the BPE will now be engaging the Senate Committee and other committees that they report to say this is our work plan for the year.
All right, then, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
All right, then. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.